What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network, on Peacock, and on Vice. As today we're talking Season 3, Episode 12 of Dark Side of the Ring, entitled The Many Faces of Luna Vachon. We're getting to this a lot longer, or a lot later rather, than I usually do. Usually these reviews go up over the weekend, on Friday, Sunday, Monday, whatever the fuck. Again, like I said in other videos, it's been a busy week, so I apologize for the delay, but we're finally getting to it here today. Good episode. I know of Luna Vachon way more than I did Johnny Canine from last week, and that was a great episode. This season's been very, I don't want to say hit or miss, because all the episodes are good, but some episodes, I guess it's no different than any other season or any other half of season or whatever. I don't know, some episodes are better than others and more engaging, not even entertaining, because this was kind of a sad episode, having to do with mental health and stuff like that. But yeah, it was interesting, though. I will say that. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it. Luna Vachon really should have gotten more of her due. She should have gotten her just due in WWE as a champion. It never happened, among other things. You don't really hear a lot about Luna Vachon and the WWE lore and WWE history, because again, she was never the champion. She was in and out of the company throughout the 90s. She did some cool stuff. She was involved in a few important angles, but she was never like the Trish Stratus or the Chyna or the Sable of the women's division. And around the time that she was in the company, both tenures, there really wasn't much of a women's division, and they let her go before they started it back up again and before she can win the championship, which was really unfortunate. But this was good stuff, though, so let's get right into it. We hear from her son, Van Herd, I believe his name is. He was also in Hell's Kitchen, so if the name or the face looks familiar, I saw a lot of other people talking about this online. He was from the show Hell's Kitchen, so we hear from him, and he talks about how growing up as, the son of Luna Vachon, he always thought wrestling was real, and her passion was wrestling. She really, really, really loved professional wrestling. We hear from Mick Foley. Mick Foley was close with Luna. He discusses her father, Paul the Butcher Vachon, who we actually hear from here on the show. I knew she was a third-generational talent. I just completely forgot about that. He is still living, who, again, we just heard from him. We hear from him on this episode. I think their dad, or his father, was Mad Dog Vachon, who went into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 2010. He passed away a number of years ago. But Paul says he was telling this story about being at a show and hearing a gunshot in a hotel, like waking up, hearing a gunshot go off, and then going back to sleep. And he wakes up, goes downstairs to the lobby of the hotel, and finds out that the guy who ran the hotel shot himself. And I'm thinking, where is this story going? And then he says, I ended up marrying the widow, like the daughter that, like he remembers seeing a daughter in the lobby of the hotel that day. It was the daughter of the guy who owned the hotel. She was down there. She was without a father. The mom was there, obviously. She was all upset. I don't know what the process was exactly, how much time went by, but he ended up marrying the widow, which was interesting, and obviously kind of adopted Luna as his own daughter. So he becomes her father, and from the get-go, she just fell in love with the family's wrestling roots. She idolized her Aunt Vivian, I guess, and all the eccentric hairstyle she had and all this other stuff. We hear from Mad Maxine, former professional wrestler as well, and she talks about the influence that she had on Luna, because Luna kind of looked up to her. Maxine also trained at Fabulous Moolah School, and I thought this was turning into a Fabulous Moolah episode at one point. We already got an episode on Fabulous Moolah a few years ago in Season 1, and how big of a piece of shit she was. She treated Luna very poorly. A lot of the younger women at that school, very poorly. She would kind of send them off to go get, I don't know what the exact word would be, but to not do good things with men that were dirty and disgusting. Like, for example, she sent Luna, very specifically, to one of the photographers to take pictures, maybe for the school or for the matches, 8x10s or whatever. And the guy was some dirty motherfucker and tried to rape Luna Vachon. It was like for a couple $100, but he got off track, tried to rape her. She actually fought him off, which was great. And it was just really, really bad. Just a really bad situation. She would continue to train there. They were all told that they had to train with Moolah, and if you didn't train there, then you weren't a big star. So you kind of had to train with Moolah, and that's what everyone, that's what Luna was told, all the other women kind of coming up at that point in the business, that you had to train with Moolah in order to get any success in the business. So it was a really unfortunate situation. We hear a lot from fellow wrestler Penelope Paradise on this episode, and she talks about her experience working with Luna. early on. I think she went to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I know that's a promotion now. I think that was the name of it back in the day, unless I wrote that down wrong. But it was there that Luna worked as an on-air reporter. They did a storyline where she went crazy upon getting attacked or something. Something happened with Kevin Sullivan where he brainwashed her and she became crazy and she never broke kayfabe. She basically lived the gimmick outside of the ring as well. And she got into drugs and she had a really rough upbringing. Her parents were pieces of shit, or one of them. Well, I don't know about Paul, but maybe before Paul came about, her dad was pretty rough. I don't remember exactly. She actually told someone that she was abused by her aunt growing up. I don't know if it was the Vivian woman or someone else, but point being, she had a really rough upbringing coming up. And the father just doesn't believe it. So maybe it was after he adopted her, and it was before, it wasn't her original biological father, but it was not him, but she was abused by other members of his family or his now wife's family. Either way, he doesn't believe it. So I guess just because he doesn't see it, he believes that it didn't happen. Whatever. She did hate being called Gertrude. I believe that was her real name. She hated being called Gertrude by anyone. The son actually believes that she was bipolar. A lot of the people that we hear from on this episode believe that she was bipolar. And she actually got into it at one point with Paradise, with Penelope Paradise at a hotel, and they got into a fucking fist fight at one point over something dumb. She ended up getting married, and he was pretty abusive, and she had bruises on her, and, I guess maybe it was mutual, but it seemed like it was pretty abusive on his end, and he was abusing her. So they ended up, I think, not breaking up, but having a divorce soon after. And then this is where we get to hear from Gangrel. Gangrel was really close with her, got a lot closer with her later on, but early on he just worked with her, and she managed him and his tag team partner Tom Nash as the Blackhearts. So he kind of recalls his experiences working with her and having fond memories of working with her and whatnot. So I guess the guy, his partner Tom Nash, had a crush on her. They got married. He and Gangrel got into it for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he accused him of sleeping with her or being with her or also loving. I don't know. But because there was so much tension between the two of them, Nash and Gangrel, they ended up breaking up. We don't hear from Nash on the episode, but they kind of throw a little disclaimer at the bottom of the screen while they're talking about this, that Nash disputes all the details of this altercation. Maybe not the fact that it happened, but maybe just the fact that of Gangrel kind of depicting Nash to be the asshole in the situation, who knows. But he disputes the details. That's all we find out here. So after that marriage ends, she ends up marrying Gangrel. So maybe she had 3 different husbands. Maybe it was 2. I don't know. Maybe the first one was Tom Nash, and I just kind of messed up my timeline here. But it sounded like she was married 3 times, with the third one being with Gangrel. And he was jealous, but he was happy for her when she got signed by WWE. They were both trying to get there at the same time. He didn't think that it would happen, but it did, and she ended up in WWE, and she debuted at WrestleMania 9 in the Shawn Michaels match, kind of managing him, which was cool. She also became the first woman, according to her son, Van Herd, that we heard from earlier, became the first woman to ever appear in a WWF video game. It was WWF Raw. And she was always on the road, though. She was successful at that point to a certain extent. She was on TV. She was a notable name in the women's division, or what was left of the women's division, rather. But she was always on the road. She was, unfortunately, she always wanted to be a better parent and be there, but she just couldn't. She never talked about her kids to anyone. Some people never even knew she had kids. She got paired on TV with Bam Bam Bigelow, and she barely wrestled. She was kind of relegated to a managerial role, and she did it well, but she wanted to compete because that's what she was. She was a wrestler. We hear from Medusa, a.k.a. Alundra Blaze, a.k.a. a million other names. And she talks about the lack of women's wrestling in WWF at that point, how the roster of women was literally 5 or 6 women. And that's probably being generous. That's what she says, as far as how many women there were. There probably wasn't even that many. And they weren't really having many matches, and the women were never on the marquee. It would always be like, oh, so-and-so, and then Ann Moore. Half of the time they would be the Ann Moore on the posters, and that really upset her, that hurt and upset Luna among all the other women, and why wouldn't it, And we're still having issues with the women's division today, and how they're depicting the women, and not giving them enough time, and all this other bullshit, But anyway, so Medusa actually tells the story about how she wanted to lose the championship. She knew she was on her way out. She wanted to lose the championship in kind of like a rogue moment to Luna at a house show in Canada. I guess Luna's from Canada. I didn't know that. Maybe they mentioned that. I just missed it. But she thought it would be a great moment. She deserves it. And let's just do it. And the company, what if they sue her or fire her? Who cares? She's already on her way out. She didn't give a fuck at that point. She was adamant about Luna winning. But Luna was adamant about not winning. She didn't want to put herself over. She refused to win. She got emotional, and Medusa was so close to letting her pin her, and Luna just kind of got out of it, so it never ended up happening. She never ended up becoming women's champion in WWF, which is unfortunate. And she ended up forming a bond instead with Sherry Martel backstage. Gangrel kind of confronted her about being with Sherry, not like romantically, but like she was not a great influence on her, apparently. She was not a great influence, and she was doing a lot of drugs, and she could have died any day, according to Gangrel. WWF put her in rehab, and they fired her while she was in rehab. They claimed it was due to her mental health. I mean, why would you fire her if she wasn't doing well, and as opposed to just continuing to help her? But whatever. That ended up paving the way for her in ECW, and she was a great fit over there. We see footage of her in ECW in 1995. She feuded with Woman, Nancy Sullivan, a.k.a. Nancy Benoit. She enjoyed her time there, apparently. Mick Foley talks about how he loved teaming with her in ECW. She ended up returning to WWF in 1997, but she was still used as a fucking manager. Around that point, they completely got rid of the Women's Championship. Sable was getting hot. She was being used more and more, but she also wasn't really wrestling regularly. They didn't have a lot of women beyond that. They wouldn't really reboot the women's division until like 98, 99, 2000, maybe around 01. I think it was 01 when they brought the championship back at Survivor Series, right? Am I missing something here? Maybe I just forgot about that. I don't know. But they still really weren't doing a lot with the women, or at least as much as they should have. She was set to lose to Sable on Raw in 98, and she was really fucking pissed. Sable was like, oh, I don't have to take any bumps because they're going to put the championship on me anyway, so why do I need to take any bumps? And she was really pissed about that, as she should have been. And she made Sable look great in that mixed tag team match at WrestleMania, what was it, 15, 14, whatever it was, that WrestleMania 98? That would have been 14, I think. She made her look great. And then yet, when she walked to the back, Sable got all the praise, and they said, congratulations. Luna thought they were talking to her, but it was actually Sable behind her. So Luna was really upset. Then no one said anything to her after the match about her doing a good job or making Sable look great or whatever. And Foley feels that she just wanted to be acknowledged. She lashed out at people, but she did bring a lot to the business, though. And she ended up just standing up to Vince at the Rumble in 99. She was set to be a part of that awful segment where the women were like taking off their dresses, and it was like a big dress, a lingerie contest, whatever the fuck it was. It was the one that Mae Young, I think, was a part of, and she got naked, which was disgusting. But Luna was like, no, I'm not going to strip. I'm not going to strip for you. And apparently that was what led to her getting dismissed. I mean, you can't really say no to something from your boss, but when it has to do with something like that, where it's completely reasonable as to why she wouldn't want to do it, because it was fucking gross to even have the women doing that in the first place. They may not have realized that then, over 20 years ago, but in retrospect, morally, it's a pretty bad thing to be doing. So she got fired soon after, and because of that, she wanted to drink more. And because of that, that kind of drove her apart from Gangrel. So they got a divorce soon after. And he felt that he had to. She wanted to get back together, but he didn't think it would be the best thing. He ran away from her and got remarried elsewhere, completely moved to the other side of the country, I think. And he admits that was a mistake, that he should have listened to her, maybe not gotten back together with her, but he kind of puts the blame on himself as well. Penelope Paradise even told the story about how she found her with a gun one day, which was pretty scary. And there was a lot of concern for Luna around that point. She never really thought she was good enough. And then when he found out about her mom's passing, it was from his grandmother over the phone. And obviously he was really emotional about that. And he still doesn't know exactly how she died. She passed away in August of 2010. She still doesn't know exactly how she died. And he doesn't really want to know because it's not going to change anything, obviously. And Medusa talks about how many people have died due to mental health and the steroids and the health issues in wrestling over the years, and her being among those many names. Foley actually reads the eulogy that he had for her on the show here. He actually reads it off, which was really cool. And Gangrel said that people never really got to see her innocent. She was always screaming and aggressive and all this other stuff, and she had an innocent side to her that people never really got to see. And he says they really should have never been together as long as they were. Just because they were both self-destructive, they were both selfish, and he apologizes for that. Gangrel comes across like a great dude, and I've got a chance to meet him before. He's a really nice guy, but I was really glad they got to interview him for this episode because, he had a lot to offer, and I thought he came across really well. So I guess one of the regrets from the family side of things is that no funeral was held for her, and they were really, I don't know why, or maybe that was Penelope who said that, I don't know, but it sucked that there was no funeral held for her passing in 2010. And Foley says that she'd be happy to see, if she was still around today, to see how far women's wrestling has come. I mean, lately it's been pretty shitty in WWE, but overall, women's wrestling, I mean, even now, it's way more prominent and way better than it was even 20, 25 years ago, around the time that Luna was in the company. Even with all the short matches and whatever. But, he's right. Women's wrestling has come a long way. There's still a lot more for them to be doing. It's not their fault in WWE. It's a lot of the times it's up to management. But, we just had a women's pay-per-view last weekend as this airs in Impact, an all-women's pay-per-view. We had the NWA Empower show, another all-women's pay-per-view. WWE had their Evolution show almost exactly 3 years ago this month. So, women's wrestling really has come a long way in the last 20 years. There's a lot of complaints to be had about how they're booking them and whatnot and the time they're giving them compared to the men. But we have really come a long way from the Luna days, and I think she would be happy. And it is a real shame. First of all, her mental health it was just terrible, and she really should have gotten help sooner, and that shit should be absolutely taken seriously. But two, that she also never got her due in WWE. Was she inducted into the Hall of Fame as part of like the Legacy Wing or something? I felt like she was. Maybe a few years ago. Maybe I'm wrong. For some reason, I'm imagining her getting inducted into the Hall of Fame as part of like the Legacy Wing, where they show a quick graphic for her and she's not actually really acknowledged, which is a shame because she is good enough to be in the actual Hall of Fame. But whatever. I thought this was a good episode. Very sad stuff, as a lot of these episodes are. It's called Dark Side of the Ring for a reason. But it was enjoyable. I liked it for what it was. And, the Luna stuff is very interesting. I knew a lot about Luna, but not as much as I came to find out here. And it's well worth the watch, as all of these episodes are. Some are better than others. Some are more entertaining or enlightening or informative than others. Some are better produced than others. But this was one of the better ones in this second half of the season. So thank you guys for checking out this review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Be sure to check out all the interviews going up this week with Roman Reigns, Carmelo Hayes, Sasha Banks, among others. So be sure to check out those interviews. You will not be disappointed. Have a great rest of the week, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.